Welcome to Transcend Awards. Prioritize legal duties. Your learning objectives are to be aware of duty to comply with legislation, to be aware of duty to comply with statutory guidance, to be aware of duty to comply with infection control policy, to be aware of duties of the business as an employer or if self-employed, to be aware of employee duties in offices and contact centre environments. Duty to comply with legislation. Legislation is relevant to all citizens and organisations. Businesses must abide by a significant amount, which is relevant to the nature of their work, their staff, subcontractors, suppliers, customers, and other stakeholders. Legislation relevant to business conducted in office and contact centre environments includes, but is not limited to, the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, the Data Protection Act 2018, the Human Rights Act 1998, the Equality Act 2010, Offices, Shops and Railway Premises Act 1963, the Public Health Act 1961, Environment and Safety at Work Act 1988, Health and Safety Offences Act 2008. Legislation compliance in regards to health and safety in a business environment is highly complex as pieces of legislation are interrelated. There are times when there may be a need to prioritise one piece of legislation over another, for example, during times of a health, safety, or infectious disease concern or crisis. This is made clear in the statutory guidance and must be justifiable. Duty to comply with statutory guidance. The Health and Safety Executive is a UK government agency responsible for the encouragement, regulation and enforcement of workplace health, safety and welfare, and for research into occupational risks in Great Britain. The HSE publish a significant amount of statutory guidance. This sets out what businesses must do to comply with the law. The HSE confirm that you should follow the guidance unless you have a very good reason not to. Public Health England are an executive agency of the Department of Health and Social Care in the United Kingdom. They exist to protect and improve the nation's health and well-being and to reduce health inequalities. Statutory guidance for businesses contains critical information which relate to health, safety and infection control. Recent .gov.uk guidance embeds information on safe practice in direct response to the coronavirus pandemic. This guidance is being regularly updated. Office and contact centre businesses have a duty to monitor and comply. Duty to comply with statutory guidance. The Health and Safety Executive are the national independent regulator for health and safety in the workplace. Businesses in the office and contact centre environments are answerable to the HSE in response to specific regulations they have put in place. Some of the most significant statutory instruments for this environment are Lifting Operations and Lifting Equipment Regulations 1998, Management of Health and Safety at Work Regulations 1999, Health and Safety Consultation with Employees Regulations 1996, Control of Substances Hazardous to Health Regulations 2002, Construction, Design and Management Regulations 2015, RYDOR or Reporting of Injuries, Diseases and Dangerous Occurrences Regulations 2013, Work at Heights Regulations 2005, Provision and Use of Work Equipment Regulations 1998. It is recommended that the statutory guidance, as set out through the HSE and other regulators, is fully considered when setting and complying with policy associated with infection prevention, mitigation and management in the office and contact centre environments. COSH is significant in terms of infection control. Duty to comply with infectious disease policy. Work environments are common sites for transmission of infections. This is because there are typically lots of bug traps in an office and associated facilities. Employers and employees have close contact with other workmates. Office cleaning is not done to microbiological sanitizing levels. The foundation of good infection control is to assume that everyone is potentially infectious. As an employer, you also have a legal responsibility to protect workers and others from risk to their health and safety. This means you need to think about the risks they face and do everything reasonably practicable to minimize them, recognizing you cannot completely eliminate the risk of infection. Infections at work are those created by exposure to harmful microorganisms such as bacteria, fungi, viruses, internal parasites, and other infectious proteins known as prions. In health and safety legislation, these are known as biological agents. Duty of the employer. Under the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974, the accountability for the health and safety within the work environment lies with the employer. It is essential, therefore, to be aware of who your employer is to ensure you engage with the right policies and practices with regards to health, safety and infection control in the office and contact centre environment. It is an employer's duty to protect the health, safety and welfare of their employees and other people who might be affected by their business. Employers must do whatever is reasonably practicable to achieve this. Employers must deal with the risks from infection at work in the same way as any other health and safety issue. They need to identify the hazards, assess the risks, control the risks. Employers are responsible for publishing their own policies and procedures on health and safety in line with statutory guidance. Infection control and contingency plans must be aligned to statutory guidance and must fall within the health and safety policies and practices for each business setting. Duty of the employer continued. Each employer must take reasonable steps to ensure that their employees, visitors, and themselves are not exposed to risks to their health and safety. This applies to activities on or off business premises. Each employer must embed controls and contingencies to prevent, mitigate, and manage risks associated with infectious diseases into their standard health and safety practices. Each employer must update their organisational, activity and site-specific risk assessments and controls during times of infection pandemic where statutory guidance requests this. This is the responsibility of the employer, although tasks may be allocated to qualified staff. If an employee catches an infection as a result of their work, this must be reported to the HSE by the employer under the Reporting of Injuries, Diseases and Dangerous Occurrences Regulations 1995. Duty of the employer continued. An example of a reasonable step an employer might take would be who should go to work when a pandemic occurs. The employer should think about where and how the work is carried out. Consider if there are jobs and tasks that can be changed to reduce risk. Identifying everyone in the business who can work from home. If they can, they should. Providing equipment needed for employees to work safely and effectively at home, for example, laptops, mobile phones, or video conferencing equipment. Keeping regular contact with people working from home, making sure you discuss their well-being and helping them to feel they are still part of the workforce. Where it is not possible to work from home, the guidance on social distancing and hygiene, hand washing with soap and water often for at least 20 seconds, should be followed. Duty of the employees. Employee rights. You have a right to feel safe and have access to an up-to-date policy which references health, safety and infectious diseases. You have a right to access safe systems in the prevention, mitigation and management of infectious diseases. You have a right to receipt of training. This may be through instructions, guidance or formal training and qualifications dependent upon your role. Employee responsibilities. You have a contractual duty to abide by your employer's policies and safe systems associated with health, safety and infectious disease. You have a legal duty to look after your own and others' health and safety. You have a duty under the common law to take care of other employees and visitors in the same way that any prudent person would do so. Duty of the employees continued. As an employee, you have a duty of care responsibility for health and safety at the workplace. This means to report any hazards, injuries, and ill health to your supervisor or employer and to cooperate with your employer when they require something to be done for safety and health at the workplace. Employees must be aware of statutory guidance, business policy and practices and must take all reasonable steps to prevent, mitigate and manage the effects of infection within the context of their own role. Thank you for watching. Feel free to watch as many times as you need or move on to the next part of your digital learning experience on your list.